So let me know if you can relate to this. I was a lonely kid. I was weird and awkward, and it always felt like nobody ever really wanted me around. It felt like if I wanted to not spend every waking moment alone, I'd have to take care of it myself, and so I became obsessed with control. If I took everything into my own hands, then I could make sure that I wouldn't get left behind. So I'd follow my classmates around during recess. I'd try and force my way into conversations during class. I would message my friends over and over until they responded. I knew what I wanted, and I tried my hardest to go and get it, but it didn't work. All that happened is I fed into my insecurities. I became a clingy, annoying person that nobody wanted to be around. I became so attached to the idea that having control would protect me from my fear of abandonment that I didn't even realize I was making that very same fear my reality. And that's the thing with attachment. It never really works. When you attach yourself to something in your life, to some result or outcome, desire or fear, that attachment doesn't actually help you. In the best case scenario, that attachment does nothing. But in the worst case scenario, it's actually counterproductive and can actively set you back, the way it did to me as a kid. The idea that being attached to the outcome is counterproductive isn't new. The Buddhists talk about detachment as an essential step in order to stop suffering and reach enlightenment. But I think right now it's more important than ever. So here's why you need to start living with more detachment in your life. Detach yourself because things just always work out anyway. Most people just go through their lives driven by the things they feel they have to do. Every day just consisting of jumping from one thing that you're worrying about to the next. And I know this because I've lived a large part of my life in the exact same way. It felt like if I didn't worry over the 100 different little things that were going on, then my whole life would fall apart. But the thing is, the imagined future that you have in your head of what would happen if you just stopped worrying about something, if you stopped stressing about it, is often worse than reality. We just trick ourselves so often, forming all these invisible walls around us that limit us. You tell yourself this story that if you don't make sure you do this, or that you worry about that, then nothing will ever get taken care of and that everything will fall apart. But how often do you just take a step back and let things happen? How often do you let things run their course without your intervention? When you live your life taking on more and more stress, without ever giving yourself a chance to step back and re-examine, you end up forming so many attachments that you go through your life with this tunnel vision. And it stops you from getting the perspective that you need in order to make big moves on things that really matter. You start missing the forest for the trees. You'd be surprised with how easy the world continues to operate without your intervention though. With how absolutely fine things are when you take a step back and detach. It's kind of sad in a way because to accept that everything would be just fine without you is also to admit that you're not really needed, that the world will just move on after you're gone. But at the same time, it's also liberating. I mean, how often have you had the desire to do something, to pursue a passion or to chase an ambition, only to deny yourself the ability to? Telling yourself things like, oh, I don't have enough time, or there's just too much going on right now. If you can accept that things will be just fine, that everything will work itself out with or without you, then you can free up your mental bandwidth so that you can devote yourself to the things that you actually care about. Rather than living a life of turbulence, with your mind clouded as you're constantly disrupted by all this noise because of your need to care about everything, you're able to detach, and suddenly everything becomes clear. You only have so much care to give, and if you can detach yourself and resist the temptation to become emotionally invested in every little thing that happens in your life, then you can gain that clarity and focus for the things that really matter. Just let the rest work itself out. Detachment makes your social life better. So this is what I wish I would have known back when I was an awkward, annoying little kid. At the time, I wanted everyone to like me. I wanted it so badly that being like the people around me, agreeing with them, doing everything I could to fit in, all of that became more important than being honest about what I really thought or how I really felt. At first it worked. People felt like I understood them, like we could relate. But it never lasted long. It was hollow, and everyone would always find out eventually. Ironically, trying to fit in so hard only made it so that people liked me even less once they realized how fake I was. It was tough. And not only that, but since I became obsessed with worrying about what other people thought of me, I developed social anxiety too. All of this set me back what feels like a ton in my life, but then that's where detachment came in to turn things around. At some point along the way, I realized that you don't actually have to care what other people think of you. And I remember that moment clearly. I was at a party with a bunch of people that I'd seen around before, but no one who I really knew. You know how it is. I was uncomfortable and I spent most of that party just kind of standing around, walking from group to group, not really knowing what to do. It was tiring, and at one point I just started talking with this group of people who just, for some reason, could not hold down a conversation. Every topic of conversation that I'd try to bring up would go nowhere. Jokes wouldn't land. Even if I asked them a question, it would barely ever elicit more than like a one-word response. I felt like garbage just thinking that these people didn't like me. I even started to feel worthless as a person because of it, even though I was having a great week before that night. And then that's where something happened. I remember actually starting to feel frustrated with myself. I had this moment in the middle of all those people where I just thought to myself, why do I care in the slightest what these people think of me? I realized that I have so much more that I'm trying to do with my life than just trying to get this one random ass group of people who I will probably never even see again to like me. And that was a liberating feeling. I had never before in my whole life realized that I could just not care about what someone thought of me. And that moment changed my life. You've got to detach. You have to stop trying to be liked or to be popular or whatever else it is you want so that you can stop caring what other people think of you. This goes back to my last point because all that you're doing is putting up these invisible walls around yourself that do nothing but limit you. What's stopping you from going up to a random person on the street and giving them a compliment? What's stopping you from getting up during a party that you feel shy in and dancing with everyone else? What's stopping you from joining a random group of people at your work or school and starting to make some friends? In each case, what's stopping you is the idea in your head that you might make a fool of yourself, that you might go up and embarrass yourself, that people might think you're stupid or weird. Can you imagine the things that you'd be able to do, how free you would feel if you just didn't have to think about the reactions and opinions of all these other people every single time that you wanted to take some kind of action? You'd go out and talk to people with no stress. Yeah, a bunch of them might not like you, but then a bunch of them might, so what do you care? You'd be able to go out and enjoy yourself in public without being exhausted and overwhelmed by the thought of how you appear to the people around you. Eventually, it would be effortless, and that's the great thing about detachment because it just makes things so easy. Once I had that realization, everything changed, and now I can go and hang out with my friends without a care in the world. I can make new friends easily, and if I don't hit it off with someone, it's barely even a thought in my mind after a few minutes. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can be outgoing, making friends and talking to people and just enjoying yourself, and it can also be easier than ever before. All you have to do is stop caring. Detachment makes your romantic life better too. Alright, so listen to me on this one because it doesn't matter your gender or which way you swing. Detachment will make it so that you attract better partners and have healthier relationships with them in the future too. I'm talking from experience here. The majority of friends I've talked to about this have told me that they started having crushes on people when they were in like middle school, maybe late elementary school. But that's not me. I was a desperate kid, and so that meant you could catch me back in 2004 getting rejected by girls at the kindergarten playground before I even knew what it meant to ask a girl out. And that streak of rejections didn't change as I got older. From the moment I could form sentences, I knew that I wanted a girlfriend, but that didn't make it any easier. This shit's cringe, but by the time second grade rolled around, I had already been rejected by Megan and Renee and Stephanie and Christina and Nicole and Victoria, and it didn't stop there. Honestly, it was so bad that by the time I got to middle school, I decided to just skip that whole process, stop asking them out, and instead just have them reject me in my imagination so that I could move on. It was bad. My whole life, up until high school, I don't think I wanted anything as much as I wanted a girlfriend. And then that's when everything changed. There was this one girl I'd been into for a couple years already, and then she got a boyfriend. We were pretty close friends, and so I accepted that it would probably stay that way and that I should just give up. Besides, I had to start thinking about what I'd do for college and planning out my academics and stuff, and I realized that I just didn't really have any time for... And that's when it happened. For the first time in my life, I had stopped obsessing over trying to get myself a girlfriend, and then everything changed. There was this one girl in a couple of my classes, and we just started talking because we had some similar interests. I was pretty absent-minded because she just wasn't my focus, honestly, but then we started hanging out. A bit more. I'd usually spend my time during lunch alone, just walking around the campus listening to music, and she would make it a habit of coming around to find me and then dragging me back so that I would eat with her and her friends. Nobody in my life had ever done that before. Without me noticing, eventually we just got closer and closer until everyone around us just thought that we were dating. I ended up falling for her, but then she rejected me. What a surprise. We stayed friends though, and about a month later, she actually came back to me and we talked about it and we ended up getting together. I went my whole life getting nothing but rejection after rejection, but the moment I gave up on it, I got exactly what I've always wanted. It didn't stop there though. We were together for some years, and in that time, well, I feel like there's no point at which you are looking for a girlfriend less than when you already have one. So, of course, another girl came into my life. My girlfriend at the time and I had previously opened up our relationship because it just fit our philosophical ideas a little bit better. And so I asked this girl out, and she said yes. She said yes immediately, making it the first time in my whole life that I had not been rejected. That relationship lasted a few years too, and after I had left both of those relationships for various reasons, I hadn't been single in like 8 years. So I made a promise to myself that I would not get into another relationship because I wanted to enjoy being single for a while. But you know what happens when you're not looking for a relationship. And so you can imagine the series of events that transpired over the next few years. It sounds ridiculous, but it's the truth. When it comes to dating, as with most things in life, the less you need it, the more you get it. When you become so obsessively focused on trying to find a romantic partner, when that's your main focus, you stop being a person to those people. If you're talking to someone and you really want them to like you because you want to date them, then you're going to stop being yourself and you're going to start playing a character. Your interactions with that person are going to feel forced. You'll feel anxious and you'll feel desperate, and the other person is going to be able to pick up on all of that. You're not going to be hanging out with them as you naturally would. You won't feel comfortable around them, and so they won't feel comfortable around you either. Not only that, but if you change yourself to try to fit into this vision of who you think you need to act like in order to become attractive, at best all you'll do is attract people who don't like you for who you are. People who like you for who you pretend to be. On the flip side, you can stop caring. You can detach yourself from the outcome of wanting to find a boyfriend or girlfriend, and then everything becomes easy. You won't feel all that pressure and stress anymore, so then you can actually just relax and start finding friends and getting to know people, feeling comfortable around them and just being your natural self around them. You won't have that forced, anxious, desperate energy that turns people off anymore, and the people who like you for who you are will come because you'll have stopped pushing them away. Eventually, it'll just sneak up on you. You're gonna hit it off with someone that you vibe with and you won't even notice. Not only that, but by detaching yourself, you'll be able to retain your independence in that relationship as well. If you know that you don't need them, then you can set your boundaries, communicate with them, and take a look at your relationship with a healthy dose of perspective. And if it's a bad relationship, then you're secure enough in yourself to be able to cut it off before everyone gets hurt. If you haven't been in a toxic, codependent relationship yet, then you don't realize how necessary all that stuff is, but it's important. I know it sounds too good to be true, but I swear to God, I wish I could go back and smack my younger self with this realization over and over again. Obviously, detachment isn't the only thing you need if you want a relationship. Some people out there are just not in a position where they're ready to have a relationship yet, and that's fine. That just means that they need to work on themselves too. In any case though, you still do need detachment because it'll genuinely change your dating life. Detachment lets you get ahead in your career. Look, I get it, I'm an ambitious person too, and so when I hear that, the first thought in my head is, wait a minute, if I stop trying for my career, won't I just stagnate? Won't I just become mediocre? No. The fact is that your attachment to your vision of what you want your career to be and how you imagine yourself getting there, your attachment to your ego and the praise and validation of others, all of that sets you back because it blinds you from seeing the most efficient thing that you need to do next in order to progress on your goals. You need to be able to focus on what matters and stop caring about the rest. This is something I used to struggle with a lot, and if I would have known then what I know now, I could have saved myself from wasting 5 years of my life. It was back in college. I had spent my whole life up until that point with one specific goal in mind. I wanted to become a physicist. Ever since I was a kid, that was what I wanted to do with my life. That was what I formed my identity around. Then I get to college and finally start taking steps to that goal, only to realize that I hated it. And it wasn't just that I had lost my motivation or something like that. I was genuinely miserable during that period of my life. It's times like those in life where you need to take a step back and reevaluate so that you can figure out the next best step that you can take to move forward. But I didn't want to. At that time, I was so attached to that idea of my future, so attached to that identity that I created for myself around becoming a physicist, that I would have rather died than to change. I slogged through 4 years of college to get a degree that meant nothing to me, only to then spend another year trying to search for a job that I knew wouldn't fulfill me. It sucked, but what got me out of that rut was detachment. Eventually, I realized that I needed to detach myself so that I could face reality and change the trajectory of my life. It was tough, but I had to become okay with letting go of that vision that I had of myself becoming a physicist, with letting go of this vision of my future that I'd held so closely for my whole life. I had to let go of the desire that I had for the prestige that comes with going to graduate school and getting a PhD. I had to let go of all the validation that I got from other people who told me that I was smart or that physics was so hard and how impressive that makes me. All those attachments did nothing for me. They didn't bring me any happiness. All they did was build up more invisible walls around me that limited me, walls that prevented me from taking the next step that I need to take in order to move forward. On the flip side, once I realized that, I was able to detach and let go. I was freed from all those restrictions. All of a sudden, I could look at all my options objectively, without judgment, and choose strategically which was the best next step forward. I had to admit my failure to everyone around me, and I had to become okay with losing out on everything that I worked for. I'm basically invalidating 5 whole years of work and effort, but it was the right choice. Thanks to that detachment, I went from being miserable and living life aimlessly to actually finding a goal and direction that motivated me, that gave me fuel and ambition and pushed me forward. In about 2 years, I went from surviving off of $25 a week for groceries because I was spending over 90% of my income on rent to making around $200K every year. I went from feeling stupid and incompetent to actually having something in my life that I was good at and that made me feel like I could provide value. Life is easy as long as you make the tough decisions. You need to have the ability to detach so that if there's something in your life that's holding you back, you can cut it off without a second thought. Mourn it if you need, but then just move on. That's why detachment can help you so much in getting ahead. It'll help you get rid of anything that's holding you back. especially yourself. And finally, detachment will help you stick to your long-term goals too. This really applies to anything that's a long-term goal. You have some kind of goal in the gym to lose or gain weight, detachment will help you with that. You want to build up your savings or pay off your debts? Detachment will help. You want to become an expert juggler? Detachment's got you there too. The reason why detachment helps so much, especially when it comes to long-term goals, is that too many people get overly attached to the outcome of that goal, which means they focus on the result over the process and then end up losing motivation once they realize that actual progress takes time. I'll give you an example. I've always been a skinny person, but like most guys out there, I've always wanted to have a built, muscular body that I knew I could be proud of. Ever since I started high school back in 2013, I was going to the gym on and off, but nothing really ever came of it. Over time, I got a bit stronger, got a bit healthier, but the results were pretty minimal, and they didn't always stick. My problem was that I just never had any consistency. I'd go to the gym for a few weeks or months, but then I'd stop. I'd eat pretty well for a while, but then I'd fall off. I'd have a workout routine for a bit, and then I'd get bored and switch to something else. There wasn't any consistency to anything that I was doing because after a few weeks on it, I would go look in the mirror and barely see any progress. I was so attached to the outcome that I was completely ignoring the process that would get me there in the first place. I'd end up losing motivation, or maybe I'd end up losing faith in what I was doing and try and find something else that worked better, always trying to optimize. What I didn't realize was that the one thing I needed was time. It took me around 9 years to come to that realization, and it happened accidentally. Early last year in 2022, I joined a martial arts gym and started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I had been out of the gym for a little while, so this was my reintroduction to exercise, and I was really enjoying it. In fact, I was enjoying it so much that I decided I would start going to the gym on my off days so I could gain a little bit of strength and be more competitive in class. I wasn't thinking about my physique at all. That wasn't what was motivating me. If anything, going to the gym was kind of like a chore, and not in a bad way, but it was just something that I had to do. I was completely detached from the outcome of going to the gym, and for the first time in my life, I saw gains. I didn't notice it at first because it just wasn't my focus, but as time went on, it was pretty hard not to tell. I had people I'd known for years complimenting me on how I looked, and eventually I had to start buying new clothes because I was just wider than I'd ever been before. At one point, I even tore open the back of one of my favorite shirts. It genuinely felt amazing, but I know that the only reason I was able to feel that way was because I didn't actually want it. I wasn't attached to that outcome, and so I didn't lose my motivation when making that progress took time. The same is true for any long-term goal that you have. If you can detach yourself from the outcome and just trust in the process, then it doesn't matter how much time it takes. It doesn't matter if you lose motivation. It doesn't matter how impossible the goal seems. You'll stick with it. You could have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, but if you pay it off little by little consistently, then eventually you'll get there, even if it feels at first like you aren't even making a dent in it. Finally, detachment makes you a better person. Remember what I said before when I was talking about your career, when I said you need to be comfortable being able to cut off any part of yourself that might be holding yourself back? That's what this is all about. Self-improvement, becoming a better person, it's all about learning and growing. You can't learn from your mistakes if you're too attached to the part of yourself that makes those mistakes in the first place. You can't learn from the advice and criticisms of others if you're too attached to your ego. If you want to improve yourself and your life, then you need to be okay with detaching from yourself. You need to be able to take a step back and take a look at things objectively. The reality just is that oftentimes we're the ones who get in our own way the most. In each of the areas that I mentioned, the one who's putting up all those invisible walls that limit you and hold you back is yourself. You can let go of everything. You can detach. You don't have to worry so much about everything all the time. You don't have to worry about whether people like you or not. You don't have to try so hard to find a romantic partner. You don't have to be afraid of coming off as a failure or regret time you wasted. And you don't have to stress about making progress on all of your goals immediately. You can give up on all of that. And not only will everything just work out, but it's all going to be even better than you could have imagined. The only thing is that you need to get out of your own way. You have to let go. So give it a shot and let me know how it goes. If you like this video, then hit me with a like or a comment so that I know that it helped you. And if you like me, well, I've got a lot more coming, so why don't you subscribe so that you can see the next video that I put out. Alright, thanks for watching.